Welcome back, everyone. So now let's press on. We've got Estelle Detrembleur, who's the Associate Director at MACE, and she'll be putting some challenging thoughts out to us with some interactive polling going on when we're talking about changing the conversation, bringing nuclear to the fore. From a timing point of view, we will be eating slightly into our break, so just to give you advance warning of that. Thank you very much. Over to you, Estelle.
So hi everyone. So thank you. So today we'll be presenting changing the conversation and bringing nuclear to the fore, and especially talking as well about different aspects of the ESG fund. So who I am? So I am an associate director at MACE, and I have 20 years of experience working of project with driving initiative predominantly within the area of technology and the environment. I have over a decade of experience acquired on major multi-billion pound infrastructure, working with portfolio, program and project management environment in oil and gas, transport, water and nuclear. I am the chair of Women in Project Management at the Association of Project Management, and as well I am the chair of fore, which is the Friend of Nuclear Energy, and I have taken the challenge this year to advocate the benefits of nuclear energy and its role in a cleaner future for a better world. So today, as I said, I will be sharing some ideas about the ESG funds, the benefits of applying ESG strategy maybe within your business, and looking at some challenges when we're talking about nuclear and ESG. So the damage to our world from the climate change emergency will be many times greater than COVID-19 if we fail to take rapidly some action globally to reduce carbon emission. So the building that we construct, use and demolish account for almost 40% of all carbon emissions. So radical changes in every part of our industry are urgently needed. Across the world, societies are already grappling with the impact of climate change, and as this change accelerates the needs to ensure that our building and infrastructure are resilient, will only become more urgent. So we must all work together to find innovative solutions and approaches to address climate change, reducing our impact on the environment and enhancing biodiversity across the world. The operation of our building remains extremely carbon intensive. Societies will come under increasing pressure to build home and workplaces that are more energy efficient than ever, and to favor retrofitting existing structures before demolishing or rebuilding. Up to 30% of the time life emission of our building can be in construction, with up to 10% more in demolition. So we expect major efforts to prolong life of existing structure through upgrades and refitting. All of these are significant opportunities and will require investment not seen in developed nations for their generations. So cost of solar panel will continue to fall rapidly, and we expect innovative solar panel surfaces to be a key component of all major building projects by 2030. But we also expect to see major investment in nuclear energy and large-scale hydro projects. So keeping our rapidly growing world powered up in a sustainable way will require huge investment in solar and wind and other types of energy in many parts of the world in the race to decarbonize our future. So everyone is talking about environmental, social and governance, better known as ESG. News stories, blogs, posts, anything, disclosure report, not a day now goes without the latest topic and issues behind raised challenges and debates that we discuss. So in few words, what is ESG? So ESG, as mentioned earlier, is standing for environmental, social and governance. ESG measure performance through a set of criteria developed for rating and reporting. An ESG rating measures environmental and social impacts and the effectiveness of corporate governance in managing them. ESG is an acronym for the 3 central factors used by responsible investors to screen and select companies and other investment for their portfolio. These refer to companies that focus on environmental, social, and governance issues. Currently, there are no standard definition of ESG or what constitutes an ESG fund. So why this changes the investment game? So what are the motivation for some investors wants to invest on projects that are changing the world? So it doesn't matter what the motivation of those investors are, they all want a return of their initial investment. And some others are willing as well to use the ESG to protect their own portfolio from potential negative impact. For example, they want to minimize the impact on the community and the ecosystem. Now that we have some ideas on what ESG is, it's not as easy or practical that it looks like. So ESG is a tool that has been used to accelerate the response to the climate emergency. So what do we need to understand by sustainability? So sustainability embeds value generation into business strategy for the long-term benefit of all stakeholders. An integrated sustainability strategy therefore reinforces that environmental, social, and other impacts are incorporated into important business and operational decisions. As many of us know, our planet has now reached a tipping point to build environment holds many of the keys to a sustainable world, but bold action now is needed and fast. In an industry that has been slow to adjust, we are taking the lead and we are committing ourselves to bigger, bolder goals so that we and our clients and partner are part of a creating world where communities thrive now and for generations to come. Some of the objectives that we can work towards is realize net zero carbon ambition, support and encourage the industry to drive carbon ambition, create biodiversity, and source and manage our resources responsibly. So how a company can be classified as an ESG-friendly organization? Well, basically, there are no clear cut to the way we can put companies in those indexes. And there are some metrics used to score companies on their ESG impact. For example, we can look at the exposure to carbon-intensive operations, and the energy efficiency, and as well the human rights. So many ethical funds will also screen for a wide range of environmental issues, as deforestation or negative social issues such as low labor standards. So being socially responsible, for example, may also include human rights and environmental sustainability. Therefore, ESG funds support communities and wider society. So I've got my first question here, and I was wondering if you would like to participate to let us know how do we create the right ESG culture and mindset? Maybe your organization is already doing that. So I just wonder how we can engage our people and reinforce the right behavior. So I will be looking at the pool eventually, if there is anyone that wanted to give us some aspect. So that's right. Getting the culture right is essential for any successful transformation. Organization can invest heavily in ESG-friendly structure, workforce strategies, and governance models. But if they are unable to align heart and mind and educate around the company ESG goals, then nothing will change. So I would like to look through the E, the S, and the G quite separately, and how each element is important to the ESG fund. The environment is high on everyone's agendas right now, so it's good to focus on companies that can provide solution on the environmental crisis. So what is a good ESG company? ESG is a proxy for being a good company. So companies that are socially responsible, diligent about corporate governance, and environmentally friendly tend to be the high quality, well-managed companies, where sustainability has also been part of the whole business strategy. So we also need talent and skills to assist ESG to grow and to keep a sustainable business. So a number of social factors can affect a company financial performance, ranging from short to long-term challenges. Social factors to consider in social investing include a company's strengths and weaknesses in dealing with social trends, labor, and politics. A focus on these topics can increase profit and corporate responsibility. So how can a company manage its relationship with its workforce, the societies in which it operates, and the political environment? This is the central question behind the S of ESG investing, the social aspect of sustainable investing. Social factors are primarily those that will arise in the relations between a company and people or institution outside of it. Sustainable investors will try to minimize the risk that societal factor pose to returns. As with ESG investing as a whole, showing a preference for companies that pay attention to these social issues can be a way for investors to reflect their values in investing while leading to higher and more reliable returns over long term. So then organizational capability sits at the heart of every transformation because they describe what organization must be good at to achieve its strategy and intended outcomes. Companies form organizational capabilities through people as the skills and knowledge of individuals become widely shared across everyone within an organization. So organization must focus on sourcing, assessing and developing talent with the right knowledge and skill for change. So looking at the G for governance, so the ESG funds invest in businesses that have good working standards. And this can include companies that have transparent financial reporting, independent board, and are regularly audited. The number of companies adopting ESG Matrix as part of their annual and/or long-term incentive program has exploded in the recent years. Only 5 years ago, most corporations had not heard of this practice. And today, 44% of the ESP 500 use one or more ESG metrics in their incentive plan for at least one member of the executive team. In the USA, for example, early adopters have tended to focus on diversity and inclusion, compared to the European companies, which are more inclined towards the environmental objectives. Either way, the use of such metrics in executive incentive is only likely to increase. And therefore, in the future, we expect ESG and sustainability to exert a major influence on how senior leaders set priorities each year and how they hold themselves and others accountable. So a sustainable culture is an energizing culture. The good news is that the relationship between culture and sustainability runs both ways. Not only you can get your culture help drive your ESG's activities, but ESG activities can also help increase engagement with new and existing employees and rally people around your organizational goal. So my next question to you is, would your organization apply standardized ESG matrix? So is that current? Are you aware of those matrix? Have you heard about them? So I just was wondering if basically we are applying those metrics currently. Okay, so we got like quite a lot of responses already. So the corporate, oh, yeah. Oh, I need to refresh again. Here we are. Okay, so maybe we continue now. So as you may know, risk management is a process through which the potential pros and cons of decisions, events, or scenario can be assessed, and then, if necessary, actively managed. Therefore, it can be used on a routine basis when we need to decide, for example, if carbon or human rights are more important to your organization. So risk management has evolved hugely for the past decade, and no longer the team agonize over the positioning of risk in the red, amber, or green infested impact versus likelihood matrix. Rather, now risks are viewed as an interconnected series of nodes that change within time and knowledge. Robust risk management relies on having as much data and knowledge on the table as possible. Some of this data will be accurate and some will not, and therefore it will help to paint the picture of what the future may hold. So the waiving of environment, social and governance risk into the increasingly complex web of modern enterprise risk is critical if risk needs to be accurately assessed and successfully managed. So there might be some area where we have unintentionally or intentionally ignored ESG risk, and it is increasingly guaranteed that we will have misrepresented our risk, or our risk profile will be incorrect. This in turn leads to suboptimal control strategies and objectives not being met. So one question may raise to your mind: do I and my organization do ESG risk management? The answer is yes, and it's always been there. However, ESG has increased in its importance to organizations from both the ethical and financial perspective. However, ESG has increased in its importance to organization from both the ethical and the financial perspective. Now it's time for practical risk management to be fully unleashed and provide the mechanism through which organizations can hold themselves to account and achieve their objectives in an ethical manner. So ESG is one part of the organization risk profile, along with other specialist areas of risk management, such as finance. So therefore, it's critical for making balanced decisions that to include ESG. The urgent need is not only to understand ESG risk, stress the need to manage ESG risk properly in light of their potential impact on organizations and their wider stakeholders. A vast array of frameworks, principles, goals, standards, and metrics have been designed to support government, businesses, and teams to operate in a sustainable manner. So there has been as well some matrix that started as a voluntary set of recommendations, and now they have evolved into a regulatory framework in many jurisdictions, including the European Union, Singapore, Canada, Japan, and South Africa. So these metrics were put in place from the Task Force on Climate-Related Financial Disclosure, and the focus is to report on the impact an organization has on the global climate. So my next question now is, how can we shift the UK policy and help the ESG case for the nuclear? So I just wonder if you heard about any challenges, or what have you discussed about nuclear being part of ESG fund in the past? Classify as green energy, better outline. That's good. Well, we got, obviously, so the UK government says that nuclear energy may, oh, I'm not used to this, obviously. So then, so the government said basically that the nuclear energy may have a vital role to play in cutting carbon emissions. So, however, we need more details to help investors to assess those nuclear technology. So, some of you may have heard that in December 2020, the UK government released the Energy White Paper, revealing a strategy to try and meet the net zero carbon emission target by 2050 as part of tackling the climate change. And according to the paper, electricity will have an increasingly important role. It's predicted to double the current need by 2050 due to the electrification of cars and vans, and as electricity increasingly replace gas for heating. In turn, that will require a four-fold increase in clean energy and electricity generation. So even if the bulk of this is likely to be provided by renewable energy, the Climate Change Committee, an independent body that advised the government, expect 20% of electricity will need to come from non-intermittent sources. Although gas-fired generation with carbon capture is one option, it believes that nuclear powers has an important role to play. So crucially, private investors need to be able to make a robust environmental and social and governance case for nuclear before they even consider the investment case. When comparing to different type of energy supply, nuclear is unique in terms of the size of its potential impact on society, both negative or positive. And its complex and often controversial history. Therefore, there is transparency is critical to drive positive outcome. In particular, we know that the investors would like to know whether the government classifies nuclear as environmentally sustainable activity, with a conclusive view on how green an energy source is for the financial and the social level. Since one of the main purposes of conducting ESG analysis is to ensure long-term negative impact on society are avoided, or at very last minimize, many investors will shy away from nuclear if the government has no plan to deal with material that stay radioactive for many years. So recently, with Phone, we supported the campaign for Stand Up of Nuclear on the 23rd of September, and in London we have distributed a series of packs, which in the capital. So the objective was to focus on the financial and target the financial sector, especially the banks and the ESG index funds. Stand Up for Nuclear is actually a movement that advocate the use of nuclear energy in over 30 countries and is still growing. So as you may know, the nuclear energy generate 30% more green electricity globally than the wind and solar, but count for 13 times less green financing. This imbalance is driving the cost of nuclear up and slowing down the transition to net zero. So we had a question as to why we would like to include nuclear in ESG. And we noted that banks would do not include nuclear in ESG state outdated, irrational and inconsistent rationales. So nuclear can be comparable with or exceed wind and solar energy sources on ESG criteria. So this pack was distributed to, face-to-face, in person in the capital, but also we have the pack available online for those who are willing to review all these different sources and information that we put together. And the key points were nuclear is under invested in versus other green technologies. ESG is as well exclude criteria for the nuclear, and this should be considered as beneficial to societies. And nuclear offers significant social benefits as well. So these are the different area, and I don't need to preach the converted, but as you can see, there are some misconception and misinformation, and then the public need to be informed as to why nuclear is a good source of energy and why they will support nuclear and net zero for the future. So we can see that, you know, people are thinking about radioactive waste, but nuclear is the only energy that actually take full responsibility for waste management. And this has been very safe since 1990, and the introduction to Gen 3 reactors nuclear has accounted for 250 times, 4 times and 2 times fewer fatalities per unit of energy than natural gas, wind and solar, respectively. So in conclusion, I just want to let you know that just be involved with ESG. You can be yourself a champion, and you can learn more about ESG in doing some research. You can put best practice as well and bring that down to your supply chain to maximize your ESG potential. As well, you have the opportunity to review your sustainability strategy within your organization. Collect independent data, so then you will help you out in getting, you know, these matrix together and maybe rise on the ESG scale. And also, well, and finally, I suggest you challenge the status quo and bringing nuclear to the fore. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, Estelle, for that. That's a fascinating area, for environmental social governance and how it's funded. So just one question, and there's been 1 or 2 queries coming in.
Yes.
How do you stop ESG being used just as a marketing tool, as opposed to actually having some good societal and environmental benefits? So, as are organizations just using it as a marketing tool to give them a feel-good factor that they're doing their bit for the environment and social governance?
Well, I think in a sense of, well, when you're looking at the environmental aspect, obviously you want to look as the good organization that always, you know, follow the best aspect and following the environmental, vision that you had not only for yourself as an organization, but also at least looking at the wider aspect, which is protecting the people and your planet. So yes, well, ESG can be used as a marketing tool. Yes, very, which is quite fair. And I think in the future it will increase because obviously we all want to look good, and obviously, you know, the better, I think it will be a positive aspect for organization, because they will force themselves in being and in putting best practice into the table. So
Yeah.
yes.
Okay, because for final thought is, if you've got, say, an oil and gas giant, which has
Yes.
been obviously drilling for oil and gas, which
Yes.
is part of the problem of why we have a climate change issue, but they will probably have a good ESG statement in terms of how they've been doing harm in a socially acceptable way. It doesn't seem right yet. We seem to be challenged on the benefits of nuclear and the positive impact nuclear can have on ESG, if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, this is what was said, isn't it? So ESG can be used in a positive and in a negative way. And obviously is to look at, well, it's more like for investors when they look at the aspect of, you know, on the social, you know, most likely you will help the community to grow and have a job and, you know, being part of, you know, of your organization and delivering a project, for example. But then on the other hand, well, when you have other organizations and that are a bit, you know, that have worked with the environment not as positively as we think, well, I think it's getting the balance right.
Yeah. Oh, that's brilliant. It's a whole fascinating area. I find it absolutely fascinating how businesses will be, how the framework will be developed as time goes on. So, because at the moment there is no real framework, as you were saying.
Yes.
And that will have to come along as time goes on.
Yes.
Thank you very much for that,
Thank you
Estelle.
as
That's
well.
been
Thank
excellent.
you
Thank
so
you very
much.
much.